Welcome to another deep dive. Looks like you've sent us some really interesting stuff about the English language.
Yeah.
It seems like you're really keen on getting to the bottom of not just how to speak English,
Sure.
but like why it's such a big deal in the world.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, we've got this article here,
Right.
The Importance of the English Language in Life and How to Master It.
Okay.
And it looks like it covers both the practical stuff
Yeah,
and the bigger historical and cultural questions too,
it really does.
which is really cool.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the article kicks off by acknowledging that English is the language of global communication.
Right.
But it doesn't just stop at saying, oh, well, lots of people speak it.
Right, because that doesn't really explain how it became so central to
Exactly.
science, tech, business,
Right.
even diplomacy.
Exactly. So let's think about the historical side of things for a second.
Okay.
The British Empire's expansion, particularly between the 17th and 19th centuries, that played a massive role.
So it wasn't just about forcefully taking over.
Right.
There's like a softer cultural influence going on too.
Exactly. Think about it. Colonies were established. English law and administration were put in place. Trading networks developed. All of these things helped spread the language way beyond just Britain.
Okay.
And we can't forget that this influence wasn't always, a good thing.
That's a good point. I mean, we can't just ignore that complex history of colonialism.
Right.
But if we fast forward to the 20th century,
Okay.
how did the rise of the U.S. as like a superpower further cement English's position?
As the British Empire started to decline, the U.S. kind of stepped into the spotlight,
Yeah, okay.
particularly in things like technology and entertainment. Think about Hollywood movies, American music. These things became global phenomenons,
Yeah.
and they brought the English language with them.
Right. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
But let's bring this back to the individual.
Okay.
So the article talks about some of the standard benefits of learning English, like getting a better job or having more educational opportunities, all that good stuff.
Right.
But I'm guessing there are some benefits that aren't so obvious,
Oh, definitely.
especially for someone like you who's clearly a lifelong learner.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just about getting a job or passing an exam. It's about the sheer volume of knowledge that suddenly becomes available to you.
Right.
Imagine having access to cutting-edge research in your field,
Yeah.
innovative ideas, creative works, all before they're translated.
Wow.
That's a huge advantage.
It is. It's like opening a door to a whole universe of information.
Exactly.
I'm thinking about like scientific breakthroughs, for example.
Yeah.
Have there been times where being fluent in English gave researchers like a head start?
Oh, definitely think about the Human Genome Project.
Okay.
That massive international effort to map the entire human genome.
Right.
Scientists from all over the world were involved.
Yeah.
But a lot of the collaboration and the sharing of findings happened in English.
Wow.
Can you imagine being a researcher in that field and being able to understand those groundbreaking discoveries immediately?
That's an amazing example. It really shows how English can be like a superpower for gaining knowledge.
Right.
It goes beyond just the obvious career benefits.
It really does. And it's not just scientific research either. Think about literature, philosophy, history. So much of human thought and creativity is expressed in English.
That's so true. And it makes me think about travel.
Okay.
I mean, sure, you can get by with basic phrases and a good translation app.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling you've got a story about how real fluency opened up a whole other level of cultural exchange.
Oh, I do actually remember that trip I took to rural Vietnam.
The one where you ended up way off the beaten path.
Yeah, that's the one. And totally lost, I might add.
Oh, no.
My basic Vietnamese phrases weren't getting me very far.
Right.
But then I met this local farmer who spoke some English.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't perfect, but it was enough for us to have a real conversation.
So instead of just asking for directions,
Exactly.
you actually got a glimpse into his life.
It was incredible. We talked about his family, his work, his hopes for his children. He even shared some local folktales, things I wouldn't have even known existed otherwise.
That's amazing.
It really brought the whole travel experience to life.
Wow, that's a great example of how language can bridge cultural gaps and
Right.
create these special unexpected moments.
Right.
It makes me wonder, how might stronger English skills change your next trip? Would you be able to connect with people on a deeper level, understand their perspectives, maybe even learn something completely new?
Imagine the possibilities.
Exactly. But let's be real for a second.
Okay.
Learning any language is tough.
It is.
And the article does point out some of the difficulties with English specifically.
It does, and it doesn't shy away from the fact that mastering grammar, pronunciation, and building a solid vocabulary can be quite a journey.
Right.
But I think the article has the right approach instead of dwelling on the negatives.
Yeah.
Let's reframe those challenges as opportunities for growth.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
Instead of getting bogged down by the difficulties, let's explore how we can turn them into strengths.
Okay.
For example, grammar.
Yeah.
I know it can seem intimidating, but what if instead of seeing it as just a bunch of random rules, we looked at it as the key to unlocking how English really works?
That's a great way to look at it. Understanding grammar is like understanding the code that makes English tick.
Okay.
Gives you a much deeper appreciation for the structure and the logic of the language.
I like that. And what about all the different accents?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it feels like every English-speaking country has its own way of saying things.
Right. And that can definitely be a challenge for learners.
Yeah.
But instead of seeing accents as obstacles, think of them as windows into the incredible diversity of the English-speaking world.
Okay.
Each accent carries its own history, its own cultural nuances. It's fascinating.
So instead of getting frustrated, we can actually celebrate those differences and appreciate the richness they bring to the language.
It's all about embracing the journey.
I like that. Okay, so we've talked about why English is so important globally, and we've touched on some of the amazing benefits of learning it.
Right.
But let's get practical for a minute.
Okay.
The article has a whole section on learning tips, and I'm really interested in diving into those with you.
Sounds good. Let's explore those tips and maybe even tailor them a bit to your specific goals and interests.
Perfect. Let's do that after a quick break.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're back and ready to dig into some of those learning tips from the importance of the English language in life and how to master it. Are you ready to get practical?
Absolutely. But before we jump into specific techniques and resources, I think it's important to remember that the best learning happens when it's personalized.
Okay.
So as we go through these tips, let's think about how they might apply to your unique goals and interests.
I like that it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Exactly.
So for example, if you're mainly interested in using English for travel, you'd probably want to focus on conversational skills and vocabulary related to everyday situations, right?
Exactly. Whereas if you're more focused on your career, you might prioritize industry-specific terms and business communication.
Okay. And what about learning styles?
Oh, yeah.
Some people love structured courses,
Right.
while others prefer a more immersive approach.
Absolutely. The article mentions a few different approaches, and it's all about finding what works best for you. Some people swear by language learning apps like Duolingo, which can be really helpful for building a base in vocabulary and grammar.
Right. I know a lot of people who have had success with those. But the article also suggests checking out some less common resources.
Yes.
Which I think is a great tip.
Definitely.
Especially for someone like you who's always looking for new and interesting ways to learn.
Yeah, and I have a couple favorites I'd love to share.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Anki?
Anki.
It's a flashcard app.
Okay.
But it's really powerful because it uses this thing called spaced repetition.
Spaced repetition. That sounds interesting. How does that work?
Well, basically, the app shows you flashcards at longer and longer intervals.
Okay.
Based on how well you remember them.
Oh, I see.
So if you're struggling with a particular word, you'll see it more often until it sticks.
So it's like a personalized study plan.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
It's helped me a lot.
And it really fits that learner persona.
Right.
Always looking for those more efficient and maybe less conventional learning methods.
Exactly. And besides apps, there's tons of amazing content on YouTube.
Oh yeah, YouTube's a goldmine.
There are channels that break down complex grammar concepts in a fun way.
Cool.
Others focus on pronunciation and accent reduction. And some even offer virtual cultural immersion experiences.
Wait, virtual cultural immersion, what's that?
It's a great way to get a feel for a new place and practice your listening skills at the same time.
So it's like taking a virtual trip.
Kinda. And speaking of practice, the article really emphasizes finding opportunities to actually use the language.
You can't just learn it in isolation.
Yeah, exactly. You got to get out there and speak, make mistakes, and learn from them.
So how do you recommend people find those opportunities to practice?
Well, there are tons of options these days.
Okay.
You can find language partners online, join conversation groups, attend virtual events. The internet has made it so much easier to connect with people from all over the world.
That's true.
And don't forget about immersing yourself in English language media.
Oh, you mean like watching movies, listening to music, reading books?
Exactly. It's a fun and effective way to improve your comprehension, build your vocabulary, and get a sense of the natural rhythm of the language.
I love that it's like turning your downtime into learning time.
Right.
But let's be real here.
Yeah,
Motivation can be a real struggle,
it can.
especially when we hit those inevitable roadblocks.
Yeah, and that's where mindset comes in,
Mindset.
which the article highlights as a key factor in successful language learning. It's about celebrating small wins, acknowledging your progress, and not being afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah, instead of seeing errors as failures, we can view them as valuable learning opportunities.
Exactly. It's about enjoying the journey with all its ups and downs,
I like that.
and remembering that every misstep is a chance to learn and grow.
Okay, so we've talked about personalized learning tips and the importance of having the right mindset.
Right.
But now I want to shift gears a bit
Okay.
and explore a slightly different aspect of English's global impact.
Sounds good.
We've talked about the benefits for learners,
Yeah.
but it raises a question about the responsibilities of native English speakers.
Oh, that's interesting. What do you mean?
Well, if English is the dominant global language, as we've established, shouldn't we as native speakers try to make it as accessible and inclusive as possible for those learning it?
That's a really good point.
Are we doing enough to be mindful of the challenges they face?
Those are important questions, and I think it's something we should all consider. You know, clear communication is so important for building bridges between cultures, fostering understanding, and promoting collaboration.
Right.
And yet, sometimes our own assumptions and biases can get in the way.
You're right. It's not about expecting everyone to conform to our way of speaking.
Exactly.
It's about recognizing the diversity of accents and dialects within the English-speaking world and being open to different ways of expressing oneself.
Exactly. Imagine how much richer our interactions would be if we all approached language learning and communication with more empathy and understanding.
Absolutely well said. And on that note, I think it's time to move on to the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground, from personalized learning tips to the importance of creating a more inclusive language environment.
We have.
But we've only scratched the surface, haven't we?
We have indeed. There's still so much more to explore, but before we jump into our final thoughts and some recommended resources, let's take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment to wrap up our exploration of the incredible impact of the English language.
Welcome back to our deep dive. And, before the break, we were talking about the role of technology
Right.
and its impact on language learning, especially with things like real-time translation becoming more and more advanced.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder about the future of English, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, on the one hand, you could say that as translation tech gets better, the need to actually learn English might decrease.
Right.
Why struggle with grammar and pronunciation when an app can just translate everything for you instantly?
Exactly, and we're already starting to see that happen with things like instant message translation and real-time subtitles on video calls.
Right.
But I think there's a catch.
Okay. I'm listening.
While tech can definitely help us communicate better, I don't think it can replace that real human connection.
You mean like that feeling of truly understanding someone?
Exactly, and connecting with them on a deeper level.
Right, because when you speak someone's language, you're tapping into so much more than just the words themselves.
Absolutely. There's a whole layer of cultural nuances and humor, shared experiences that a machine can't really grasp.
Yeah, it makes me think of all those idioms and expressions.
Yeah.
Those phrases that have a meaning that goes beyond just the literal words.
Right.
Well, actually, never mind. That's a story for another time.
Okay.
But you get the point.
I do. It's those subtle layers of meaning, those shared references, that make language so much more than just a tool for communication.
Right, it becomes a way to really connect with people.
Exactly.
So yeah, technology can make things easier, but I don't think it'll ever fully replace the need for human interaction.
I agree.
And who knows, maybe as tech keeps developing, it'll actually make language learning even better.
Yeah.
Instead of replacing human connection, it could actually help us connect even more deeply across cultures.
That would be amazing.
So if you're listening and you're thinking about learning English or any language for that matter, don't let the challenges or the fancy technology scare you off.
Right. It's an incredible journey
It really is.
that will open up so many doors to new cultures, new ideas, and new ways of seeing the world.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
And remember, it's not about being perfect.
Yeah,
It's about enjoying the process, the journey, and making those connections.
absolutely. Embrace the mistakes, the funny moments, even the awkward encounters.
Right. Those are often the best stories.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the English language.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed exploring this fascinating topic with us.
And maybe even discovered a new appreciation for the power of language.
And if you're feeling inspired to continue your language learning adventure, remember there are tons of resources out there to help you along the way.
Definitely.
So don't be afraid to experiment. Find what works for you.
Right.
And most importantly, have fun with it.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing. Stay curious and never stop exploring the world around you.